I never thought a kitchen prank could make me question whether my family ever respected me at all. Zane rigged my faucet with a rubber band so that when I turned the handle, a jet of cold water sprayed directly into my face. My sweater clung to my arms. My glasses were streaked. Water dripped down my nose. I was too stunned to even curse. "Hashtag wet granny," he shouted, holding his phone high to capture every moment. His voice cracked with laughter. He thought it was hilarious. Melinda, my daughter, his mother, just leaned against the counter with her arms crossed and a smirk pulling at her lips. He's just a kid making content. Don't take it so seriously. That should have been the moment she defended me, the moment she told him to delete it, to apologize, but she didn't. She acted like I was the uptight one. Like being drenched and filmed against my will in my own kitchen was somehow a generational misunderstanding. Like boundaries were just punchlines to be uploaded. I stood there, frozen and dripping, while my own grandson made a joke out of me for strangers. Not for family laughs, not for a silly private memory, for views, for the internet. He posted it within minutes. I didn't even know. Not until hours later, when Melinda came into the kitchen, laughing, phone in hand. "Look how funny it turned out," she said, like it was a movie trailer. I took the phone. And there I was, mouth open in shock, water soaking through my blouse, blinking blindly at the faucet like a fool. Zane's voice played over the footage. When Granny forgets how plumbing works, they'd added music, cut in slow motion, zoomed in on my face like it was a cartoon. The comments were already piling in. "LOL, get her! That's elder abuse, bro," tears of joy. "Nah, she's mad for real." People laughed at me. Strangers, teenagers, adults. They laughed and shared it like I was some character, not a human being. Not a grandmother. Not a mother. Just wet granny. I sat on the edge of my bed that night, wrapped in a towel, watching that clip over and over. I knew I shouldn't have. I knew it would only hurt. But I needed to see what they saw. Needed to understand what made me so mockable. Melinda passed my door without a word that night. No knock. No apology. Zane was laughing from the other room, probably reading comments out loud to himself like a badge of pride. I used to think they loved me. I used to believe that opening my home to them, after Melinda lost her job, after Zane started struggling in school, was the right thing to do. But that night, I saw it plain. I was a convenience, a roof, a background character. And now, I was content. I stayed quiet. I didn't confront them. Not yet. But something shifted in me. Something subtle. Not rage. Not even sadness. Just a sharp awareness that my kindness had been rebranded as weakness. That I was no longer Eleanor, the woman who raised a daughter alone and built a home, brick by brick. I was now a walking meme. And I realized this. If they saw me as a joke, then maybe I needed to remind them who the hell I actually was. Because I may have been quiet, but I was still the one who owned the deed to this house. Still the one who paid the bills. Still the one who built a life they were currently stomping through like it was theirs. And they'd forgotten that. But I hadn't. The faucet prank wasn't the first time. Not even close. It was just the first time it got this attention. I sat in the living room later that evening, still damp from the spray. The echo of Zane's laugh bouncing around my skull like a bell I couldn't unring. Melinda flopped onto the couch across from me, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. I cleared my throat. I don't like being filmed without knowing. Zane didn't even look up. It got 200,000 views already. Melinda chimed in, eyes still glued to her screen. "It's just fun, Mom. You need thicker skin." Then they laughed. Together. Like I was the punchline to a joke they'd been rehearsing for years. Because, in a way, I was. The fake spider in the laundry room that nearly gave me a heart attack? Zane had posted it under "Jump Scare Granny." The whipped cream on my reading glasses? That one was Granny's Blind Bake. And let's not forget when he posted a clip of me dozing off during a movie, drool and all, with the caption, "Dead or just old." I should have drawn the line sooner. I should have yelled, I should have taken the phone and smashed it against the wall. But instead, I sat there in my recliner, clutching the throw blanket to my chest like it could protect me from being invisible in my own house. That night, the video made it even into the church ladies' group chat. Marlene, the pastor's wife, texted it to me privately. "Is this you?" I wanted to lie. I didn't. The video already had 600K views. The comments underneath made my stomach turn. LMAO, this old lady's a champ. Yo, she's like 90 and still taking L's. Who let their grandma be a meme? I turned the phone over and set it face down on the table. My hands shook, not with rage, with shame, because I'd known it was coming, and I hadn't done a thing to stop it. Zane wandered in to grab a soda from the fridge. "Granny, you're trending," he said, grinning like it was a prize. "You should be proud." I didn't answer, because if I opened my mouth, I didn't know what would come out. Melinda appeared in the doorway. "He's just being creative. At least he's not out drinking or doing drugs." I looked at her, really looked, at the woman I raised through divorce and debt and loneliness, the woman I nursed through postpartum depression, the woman I let move back in when things got tough, even when it meant putting my own retirement on hold. And she didn't see me. Not anymore. Maybe she hadn't for years. They didn't prank me because they were cruel. They pranked me because I was easy. Because I never said no. But something shifted inside me that night. That night I went to bed early, not because I was tired, but because I couldn't bear to be in the same room with them anymore. I lay there, staring at the ceiling in the dark, listening to their voices muffled through the floorboards. Zane's laugh, Melinda's shrill commentary about someone on TV. No one asked if I was okay. No one even knocked. And in that stillness, memory came rushing in. This house, it wasn't just walls and doors and heating bills. It was my life. It was where I raised Melinda alone after Harold died in '89. Where I stayed up late sewing Halloween costumes out of old curtains. Where I taught her how to drive in the gravel driveway, her hands too tight on the wheel, my voice too calm for how scared I really was. And it was the same house I kept running after Zane's father left. Disappeared, really. Never sent a single birthday card. Never even asked about his son. Melinda fell apart back then. She cried on the kitchen floor for hours while I held her, whispering, "You're not alone. I've got you." I was the one who cleaned up the messes, paid the rent when she couldn't, rocked a screaming baby while holding down a job, shelving books for minimum wage. I gave up early retirement, gave up trips with the church choir, gave up rest, all for her, all for Zane. And for a while, I believed it mattered. Zane used to bring me macaroni art with crooked hearts drawn in red crayon. Used to fall asleep on my chest when thunderstorms scared him. Used to call me Nana Bear, but kids grow. And Melinda, she never grew out of making excuses. She was always tired, always overwhelmed, always just barely hanging on. So I stepped in. Again and again. I told myself it was temporary, that one day she'd find her footing. Instead, she found ways to coast, to lean on me until my spine bent under the weight. Zane never learned limits because Melinda never enforced them. Every tantrum got a treat. Every bad grade got a shrug. I was the only one who tried to say no, and even then, I said it softly. Now that boy, once terrified of bees and clingy at bedtime, stood over me with a phone, laughing as I choked on faucet water. And Melinda, my own daughter, stood beside him, amused. It wasn't just a prank. It wasn't even about the video. It was erasure, like I didn't matter anymore. Like I was an artifact of their past, tolerated only because I hadn't died yet. I didn't feel proud now. I felt hollow, used. The kind of tired that doesn't touch your bones, but lives in your skin. And for the first time in years, I wondered if maybe love wasn't enough. Maybe it never had been. Not when it's given and never returned. Not when your own daughter can't look at you without rolling her eyes. Not when your grandson sees you as a punchline. After everything, I didn't scream. I didn't pack a bag or threaten to leave. I didn't even raise my voice. I just opened my laptop and started reading. It was a Wednesday morning. The house was quiet. Zane was still asleep, and Melinda had taken the car to her networking lunch. which I knew from experience meant wine and gossip. I sat in the small library room off the hallway, the one I'd painted sage green after Harold passed. My coffee had gone cold, but I didn't care. My hands trembled over the keyboard as I typed in the search bar, "Upstate New York tenant rights." I didn't know exactly what I was looking for. Just a way to breathe. A crack in the wall I could widen. A lifeline. And there it was, buried in legal terms and county links. Even family members need a lease or written permission to reside in a home they don't own. No lease? No right to stay. I blinked. That couldn't be right. It felt too simple. Too possible. I kept reading, page after page. Legal forums, county court guides, real estate blogs. Every source said the same thing. Blood doesn't override ownership. I pulled open the drawer of the small oak filing cabinet and dug out the envelope I hadn't touched since 2006. The deed, yellowed at the edges, but still official. And there it was. Owner, Eleanor Jean Morton. Sole and primary. Not Melinda. Not Zane. Just me. I sat back, breath caught in my throat. All this time, I'd felt powerless, trapped, like I was clinging to the last corner of a home that wasn't really mine anymore. But it was mine. Legally. Fully. Entirely. They were guests. Guests who never asked, never paid, never cleaned, and definitely never thanked me. I traced my name with my fingertip, slowly. It felt surreal. Like reading the first line of a novel you'd forgotten you wrote. This house. The same one where Melinda learned to ride her bike in the driveway, where Zane made pillow forts in the den, where I cooked Thanksgiving dinner for 30 years straight, was still mine. And I didn't need their permission to reclaim it. A flicker of something started to grow inside me. Not quite rage. Not vengeance. Power. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't shout or throw things, but takes measured steps behind closed doors. I grabbed a yellow notepad and wrote a list. Not an emotional purge. A plan. Consult an attorney, gather evidence, prepare, notice to vacate, protect personal property, breathe. For the first time in months, my breathing actually deepened. My shoulders unclenched. I wasn't helpless, I was just quiet. And they'd mistaken that for weakness. That was their mistake. I heard Zane's heavy footsteps upstairs, the familiar clomp of someone who didn't worry about being heard. The sound used to make me smile. Now it made me feel like a stranger in my own home. But I didn't panic. I didn't shove the papers away. I left the deed sitting out, right on top of the desk. Let them see it if they bothered to look. Let them remember whose roof they lived under. And let them start to wonder, what happens when the person you mocked finally stops trying to keep the peace? Because peace, I was learning, isn't the same as love. And love, without respect, isn't worth bleeding for. 2 days later, I met Miriam at the little cafe off Main Street, the one with the sticky menus and mismatched mugs. We used to come here once a week, back when I still left the house, just to be somewhere. She was already seated when I walked in, arms crossed, her silver curls piled into a loose bun. She stood when she saw me, and for a moment, I didn't think I could do it. I almost turned around. But she hugged me tight, no questions, no polite hesitations, just held me, and that broke something. We sat in the corner booth. I ordered tea, though I knew I wouldn't drink it. Miriam didn't wait long. "I saw that video," she said softly, "the one your grandson posted." I looked away, embarrassed. I didn't even know it had gone that far, I admitted. I thought it was just some silly prank. But then I started reading the comments. The way they laughed. Miriam's jaw tightened. "Eleanor, that's not a prank. That's abuse. Public humiliation isn't humor." I shook my head. "He's just a teenager. He doesn't think." "No," she said firmly, cutting me off. "Melinda is the adult, and she let it happen. Worse, she laughed with him." I stared down at the paper napkin in my lap, twisting it until it tore. I didn't want to call it abuse. That word felt too big, too heavy. It belonged to stories on the news, to bruises and shouting. Not this quiet erosion of dignity. Not this slow, daily unraveling. But the sting in my chest told me Miriam was right. She reached into her purse and slid a card across the table. "This is Michael Wells, a lawyer. He helped my cousin when her daughter tried to force her into a care facility for her bank account. He's kind. And more importantly, he listens." I didn't touch the card. "Miriam," I whispered, "if I go to a lawyer, it feels like betrayal." "Betrayal?" She leaned forward, eyes sharp but kind. "Eleanor, they betrayed you. Your own daughter turned your home into a stage for mockery. That boy sprayed you in the face and posted it for the world. You have given them everything. You let them stay in your house. You paid the bills. You raised both of them for God's sake. When do you get protected?" I couldn't answer, because the truth was, I didn't even remember what protection felt like. Not since Harold passed. Not since I became the safety net everyone expected to be bottomless. My voice cracked. "I don't want to blow everything up." Miriam smiled sadly. "You're not blowing anything up. You're stepping out of the wreckage they built around you." That landed hard. She sipped her coffee and watched me for a moment before adding gently, "Asking questions isn't betrayal, it's survival." That sentence stayed with me. When we left, she hugged me again, this time longer. "Promise me you'll call him, even if it's just for information." I nodded. And I meant it. That night, I stared at the card on my nightstand. I hadn't told Melinda or Zane I'd been out. Neither of them noticed I was gone. They didn't ask. They never did. But for the first time, I wasn't waiting for them to notice. I was noticing me. I picked up the phone and dialed. Because Miriam was right. I wasn't blowing anything up. I was waking up. Attorney Michael Wells had a soft voice and a sharper mind than I expected. His office was tidy, tucked inside a converted house on the edge of town. Warm lighting. Wooden floors. It didn't smell like threat or litigation. It smelled like lemon oil and quiet control. I clutched the deed in my lap like a shield. Part of me still felt like a child sneaking into a room she didn't belong in. "You're not the first," he said gently after I explained. "Older women, especially mothers, are often exploited emotionally long before the financial or legal abuse shows up." I flinched at the word. Exploited. But I didn't argue. He asked questions. I answered. Dates. Who lived in the house? Who paid what? I told him about the video, the comments, the slow way my daughter and grandson had turned me into a joke. "They live rent-free?" he asked. "Yes." "Do they contribute anything financially?" I hesitated. "Zane occasionally empties the dishwasher. Melinda pays for groceries, sometimes." He looked over his glasses. "That's not contribution. That's the bare minimum of courtesy." I nodded. Quietly. That was the hardest part, realizing how low my bar had dropped over the years. He outlined my rights in calm, clear terms. "Because your name is on the deed, and there's no lease agreement, they are considered at-will occupants. That means you can issue a 30-day notice to vacate. You don't need a reason." I blinked. "I can just tell them to leave?" "Yes," he said. "And if they refuse after 30 days, we file for formal eviction. It's legal. It's clean. And it's your right." The word eviction felt sharp, cruel, like something meant for strangers, not blood. But then I thought about the way Zane laughed behind his phone. The way Melinda rolled her eyes every time I opened my mouth. The way my name, my presence, my personhood had shrunk inside these walls. It wasn't blood. It was entitlement. I must have looked unsure, because Michael leaned forward slightly. "Eleanor, are you ready for this?" I let the question hang between us. Was I? Not quite. Not fully. Not in the way you're ready for birthdays or news or visits from old friends. But I was ready to stop being erased. I left with the paperwork in a neat envelope, tucked beside the business card Miriam had given me. My purse felt heavier walking out than walking in, but my shoulders? Lighter, straighter. I sat in the car for a long time before starting the engine, stared at my hands on the wheel. I didn't feel vengeful. That surprised me. I just wanted peace, real peace, the kind that doesn't come with strings or shame. The kind that lets you sit in your own kitchen without being filmed for laughs. That evening, I ate dinner alone. Leftovers. Quiet. I didn't tell Melinda or Zane about the meeting. They didn't ask. And the silence between us, that used to ache. But now, it was fuel. Because silence wasn't scary anymore. Staying small was. After that meeting, something in me shifted. Not loudly, not all at once, just a quiet turning. I stopped trying to be seen and started preparing to leave my own mark. The first thing I did was create a folder, plain manila. I labeled it in tiny pencil letters, evidence. I printed out screenshots of the video, comments, timestamps, even a screen grab of the moment Zane zoomed in on my face and added cartoon tears for laughs. He thought it was harmless. He forgot the internet keeps receipts. I added everything I could, text messages, dates, the photo Miriam sent me with the caption, "Is this you?" I even printed my bank statements. Not because they proved anything directly, but because they showed what I was still paying for. Every light switch, every toilet flush, every late-night snack Zane grabbed without asking. They were living here for free and treating me like a prop. I also began locking my bedroom door, not out of fear, but control. It felt small at first, silly even, but the first night I clicked that lock and lay back on my bed with no footsteps wandering in, no random bursts of music or shouts from the hallway. It felt like armor. I tested other things too. I told them I'd be taking a trip soon, just to see if they'd even care. "Oh," Melinda said, not looking up from her tablet. "You'll be back before trash day, right?" Zane just asked if he could use my bathroom while I was gone. Neither of them asked where I was going, or why, or with whom. I could have said I was going to space and they just asked if I could bring snacks. They didn't see me. That made what came next easier. I backed up my documents on a flash drive and tucked it behind the spice rack, called the locksmith, and scheduled a change for the locks. Quietly asked Miriam if her nephew, who'd done her taxes for years, could recommend a property manager, someone trustworthy, discreet. Every move I made was quiet, gentle, a whisper, not a scream, because I'd spent decades being the loud one, the fixer, the planner, the cook, the shoulder, and look where that got me. Now I was the one building the exit. Zane posted another video that week. Nothing as cruel, just one of me trying to read a label at the grocery store. He zoomed in on my squinting eyes, captioned it, "Granny needs glasses.exe. 5,000 likes. Melinda shared it on Facebook with a laughing emoji. My mom is such a character. I didn't confront them. I added it to the folder. I started drinking tea at odd hours, watching how they didn't even glance my way when I entered a room. Like I was already gone. Like I'd never really belonged. It should have hurt. A month ago, it would have. But instead, it gave me clarity. It was the backyard this time. I'd been pulling weeds near the fence, gloves on, sweat trickling down my back. The garden used to be my sanctuary. Roses, lavender, a patch of tomatoes I babied like children. I hadn't been out there much lately, not since the faucet prank. But that morning I needed air, dirt, silence. Zane must have seen me from the window. I didn't hear him coming. All I felt was the sudden weight, cold, foamy, wet, splattering the back of my neck. Then, laughter, high and sharp and cruel. I turned fast, too fast, and stumbled. My hands hit the soil hard. "Got her again," Zane crowed, phone in one hand, a can of shaving cream in the other. "Man, Granny's gonna lose it." He didn't even bother to run. Just stood there filming while I sat stunned, streaks of white down my arms, my gardening shirt soaked, eyes stinging from the foam. Melinda came out the sliding door, sipping iced tea. I looked at her, blinking through the mess. "Seriously?" I said. She smirked. "Teenagers. It's just a phase, Mom." I sat there on the grass, legs trembling, heart pounding in my throat, and I realized something painful and sharp. They weren't going to stop. Not because they didn't know better. Not because they were young, or thoughtless, or busy. But because they didn't care, there would always be another prank, another funny video, another laugh at my expense. And if I cried, I'd be called dramatic. If I fought back, I'd be told I was overreacting. And if I stayed quiet, they'd keep filming, keep mocking, keep turning me into a joke in the very home I'd built for them. I stood up slowly, brushing foam off my arms with shaking hands. I didn't say a word, just walked past them. Zane was still chuckling. Melinda had already gone back inside. But inside, something else had taken root. This wasn't just annoyance. This was dehumanization. I was done. 3 days after the shaving cream, I walked into the post office with a manila envelope and my heart thudding so loud I was sure the clerk could hear it. Inside was the notice. Typed neatly, reviewed by Michael Wells, signed by me. 30 days to vacate, per New York tenant law, Melinda's full name at the top. Zane's too. I handed it over the counter, certified mail. The clerk, a young girl with chipped pink nails, didn't blink as she stamped it. Didn't know she was witnessing a moment that had taken me decades to arrive at. Tracking numbers in your receipt, she said. I nodded, thanked her, and stepped outside into the thick July air. It smelled like pavement and cut grass. The kind of air that used to mean sidewalk chalk and garden hoses when Zane was little. The kind of summer that used to feel like a promise. This time, it felt like closure. I stood on the post office steps and breathed deep, deeper than I had in months. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I felt tall, solid, because for the first time, the power was mine again. I wasn't asking for change. I was issuing it. When I got home, the envelope beat me there by a day. Melinda found it first. I watched from the hallway as she flipped it open at the kitchen counter, brow furrowed. She didn't say anything. She set it down like it was junk mail. Zane didn't even glance at it. They still didn't get it. And that was fine, because I did. That night, I circled the date on the calendar in the laundry room. Big red marker, August 12th, the day they would no longer live in my house. Not a maybe, not a threat, a certainty. Every morning after that, I passed that red circle like a lighthouse, a signal, a quiet reminder that I wasn't powerless. I was patient, strategic, done. I didn't mention it, didn't start arguments, just kept collecting, printing, filing. One night, I even found an old recording Zane had taken. He was mocking my bedtime routine, narrating how I tucked myself in like an antique doll. I saved it, time-stamped it, let them laugh, because soon they'd be laughing somewhere else. I started moving through the house differently, not like a ghost, but like a queen packing up her court. I stopped cooking for them. I stopped washing communal towels. I bought a lockbox for my documents and moved them into my closet. Zane asked where the snacks went. I told him, figure it out. Melinda asked why the AC was warmer. I said, start a fan. The more boundaries I set, the more irritated they became. But still, no one asked about the envelope. No one asked about the calendar. They thought I was bluffing. That was their mistake. Because they'd never seen me serious before. They thought I was a doormat that sighed too much and made banana bread. They forgot I was the woman who paid off the mortgage while working 2 jobs, who buried a husband and kept going, who raised a daughter and a grandson and still managed to fold the laundry before midnight. I mailed the notice. I marked the date. And I was counting down, smiling quietly every time I passed that red circle. Because this wasn't a tantrum. It was an ending. 2 weeks passed before I said a word. Long enough for the notice to lose its sting in their minds. Long enough for their comfort to wrap around them like a warm blanket. Too tight to see it was about to be yanked off. It was a Tuesday morning, humid and still. The kind of day that sticks to your skin. I made scrambled eggs and toast. Only for myself. Poured coffee. Sat at the head of the table like I used to, before they slowly edged me into silence. They wandered in eventually. Melinda in her robe, scrolling through emails. Zane with headphones around his neck, and that usual glazed-over look that teenagers wear like a shield. He reached for the fridge, then stopped when he realized nothing had been restocked. I let the silence sit. Then I reached into the envelope beside me and slid the notice across the table. "You have 2 more weeks to move out," I said. Zane blinked. "What?" Melinda looked up, annoyed. "What's this?" "It's not new," I said calmly. "I mailed it 2 weeks ago. You signed for it." Her mouth opened, closed. "You're evicting your own daughter?" "Yes." "You can't be serious." Her voice wavered, part outrage, part disbelief. Zane laughed. "Okay. This is like a prank or something, right?" I looked at him. "This isn't a joke." He stopped laughing. I could feel the air shift. Not dramatic. No thunderclap or slammed fists. Just the tension of 2 people realizing they'd underestimated the quiet one in the room. "I've given you time," I said. "I've given you space. I've given you my home, my food, my name, and every ounce of patience I had left." Melinda pushed the notice away like it burned. "This is insane. Where do you expect us to go?" "You should have thought about that," I said. "Before you made me your entertainment." Zane rolled his eyes. "It was just videos." "Chill." "You filmed me without my consent," I said. "You humiliated me. And you posted it publicly. That's not content. That's disrespect. And it ends now." Melinda crossed her arms. "You're going to regret this when you're alone and need help and we're not around." I smiled, just slightly. I've been alone for years. I was just too kind to admit it. The room went still. I stood, plate in hand, and carried my breakfast to the sink. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't break a single dish. That was the power. Control. I rinsed the plate, dried my hands on the towel, and turned back to them. "You've got 2 weeks. Use them wisely." Melinda looked stunned. Zane just stood there, mouth half open, like a boy who expected a different kind of story to play out. They thought I was bluffing, even now, with the ink still fresh. But the clock had started ticking the moment I stepped into Michael Wells' office. Now it was just louder. As I walked out of the kitchen, I glanced at the calendar on the wall. 12 days left. And they finally understood. I wasn't asking anymore. That night, I sat on the porch with a blanket over my knees and the quiet hum of summer pressing in around me. I used to dread this silence, back when I still believed that noise meant love. The clatter of dishes, Zane's stomping, Melinda's constant talking. I thought it meant I mattered, that I was still in the middle of things. But now, the stillness felt like something else entirely. Peace. The fireflies blinked in the tall grass. I used to catch them in jars for Melinda when she was little. She'd scream when they got too close, then cry when they died in the jar overnight. I'd tell her, "If you love something, you have to let it breathe." She never really understood that. I pulled the blanket tighter and looked up at the house. My house. The soft yellow glow from the living room windows. The porch boards Harold repaired with his own hands. The wind chimes I bought from a craft fair the year after he passed. Every inch of it held me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt held. I cried then. Not hard, not from sadness, but from release. From the slow, aching undoing of every rope I'd tied around myself in the name of keeping this family together. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't heartless. I wasn't punishing them. I was just finally saying no. No to being filmed. No to being laughed at. No to being erased in the home I kept standing while everyone else leaned on me. Melinda's voice floated through the screen door, muffled. She was on the phone, her tone tight, clipped, probably talking to someone about how crazy I was being. How ungrateful. How unstable. Zane was upstairs, probably posting some vague rant on his feed about boomer drama. Let them. I wasn't afraid of being the villain in their story anymore. Because I'd been the unpaid hero of theirs for too long. I sat there for almost an hour, just breathing, watching the night come fully in, letting the wind play with the edges of the blanket, letting the ache behind my ribs quiet down. My whole life, I tried to keep things stitched together. I kept people fed, bills paid, birthdays remembered. I gave every part of me, believing that someday they'd see it, acknowledge it, thank me. But they didn't. And they wouldn't. And that was okay. Because I finally saw me. 3 days before move-out, Melinda followed me to the driveway barefoot, mascara already smudging under her eyes. "Mom," she called. "Wait, please." I didn't stop right away. I kept loading the trunk, some old donations, a lamp, a few books I was taking to the church resale shop. The kind of things you handle when you're tying up your life with fresh knots. "Can we just talk?" she said, breathless now. "Not yell. Just talk." I finally turned. She looked smaller than I remembered. Still taller than me. Still younger. But smaller. Tired. She wrung her hands like a girl about to confess something. "We'll stop, okay?" Zane and I talked. "No more videos. We get it now." "Do you?" I thought. Out loud, I said, "You had months." Her mouth opened, a soft gasp. I know. But we didn't think you were serious," I said. She nodded. Her lips trembled. She reached out, and I didn't move. "I just need a little more time. School's starting soon. It's hard to get a place on short notice." I looked at her, really looked, and all I could think about was the shaving cream dripping into my eyes, the faucet soaking my sweater, the way she said, "You need thicker skin," like that would patch over cruelty. "You're a grown woman, Melinda," I said softly. "I gave you 30 days. That was generous." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "We're your family," she said. "No," I said. "We were a family. Now we're people who live in the same house. And that ends in 3 days." Her voice cracked. "Zane has nowhere to go." I paused. "He has a mother, and you have a job." "I'm trying," she whispered. "I know," I said. "But trying doesn't erase damage, and it doesn't extend your lease." She looked past me then, toward the porch where we used to sit and drink iced tea in the evenings. She started crying, for real this time. Not performative, not manipulative, real tears. But it didn't change anything, because her tears came too late, after months of silence, after every dismissal, every laugh, every look of boredom when I spoke. I remembered begging her to help pay the gas bill 2 winters ago. She said she'd get around to it. I remembered Zane filming me eating cereal, adding cartoon chomping noises, and posting it without even a second thought. Tears didn't undo that. I watched her cry, and I didn't feel triumphant. I felt done. "You're right," she finally whispered. "We took you for granted." I didn't answer, because an apology offered under eviction isn't a revelation. It's a tactic. She wiped her face with the sleeve of her sweatshirt, and for a moment, I saw the little girl she used to be. But that girl was gone. So I turned, reached for the car door, and said one last thing before I drove off. "I loved you even when you forgot who I was. That's not revenge. It's memory." I drove to the resale shop, and I didn't look back, because you don't pause for tears that only come when the door's finally closing. Move-out day started like any other. Birds chirping outside my window. The smell of coffee drifting up from the kitchen, though I didn't make it. I wasn't cooking for them anymore. I was counting down the hours. By 9 a.m., the house was tense, the way it gets before a storm. Except this time, I was the weather. They hadn't packed a single box. Melinda stayed holed up in her room. Zane stomped around louder than usual, slamming doors, turning the TV up too loud, posturing, pretending like they could intimidate me into changing my mind. They didn't understand. I'd already left emotionally. Now I was just collecting the physical pieces. At noon, I walked into the living room where they both sat, arms crossed, bags still unpacked, faces defiant. "You were supposed to be out by 10, I said calmly. Melinda stood. "This is ridiculous. You'd really call the sheriff on your own family?" "I will," I said. Zane scoffed. "You're gonna die alone in this dusty old house." I walked over to the router in the corner, pulled the plug. The Wi-Fi died with a satisfying click. "No more filming," I said. Zane's face twisted in shock. Melinda took a step forward. "You're seriously doing this?" I didn't flinch. "Yes." "What about loyalty?" she spat. "What about forgiveness? You think this makes you powerful? You think being cold makes you right?" I didn't answer right away. I looked around the room. The coffee table I bought from a flea market in 1994, the lamp Harold rewired himself, the quilt I hand-stitched over 3 winters. All of it mine. What about loyalty? Where was loyalty when I was crying alone in the laundry room? Where was it when my grandson made a fool of me in front of the world? Where was it when my daughter let it happen? I think having boundaries makes me sane, I said finally. And I think being disrespected for years doesn't earn you forgiveness. It earns you consequences. Zane laughed bitterly. Wow, you're a real monster. I almost laughed too, not because it was funny, but because it was desperate. They were losing their safety net, and for the first time, they realized they had never built one of their own. I stepped aside and dialed the sheriff's office, calm as a breeze. "Hi," I said. "This is Eleanor Morton at 112 Hillview. I issued a legal eviction 30 days ago. The occupants have refused to vacate. I'd like assistance." Melinda gasped. "You actually called?" "Yes," I said, locking eyes with her. "I told you I would." She stormed upstairs. Zane kicked the ottoman on his way out to the porch. They weren't children, but they threw tantrums like they were. And I sat down in the armchair and opened my planner. I wasn't heartless. I was just finally done being a fool. They called me cruel. But cruelty isn't removing people who treated your home like a joke. Cruelty is filming your grandmother for views and laughing while she wipes shaving cream out of her eyes. Cruelty is expecting someone to feed you, house you, and stay silent while you strip away her dignity. So no, I wasn't cruel. I was the line they thought they'd never meet. And today, they ran straight into it. The sheriff arrived just after 2 p.m. His cruiser pulled into the driveway slow and steady, lights off, no sirens. I greeted him on the porch with a folder in hand, copies of the eviction notice, signed delivery receipts, time-stamped videos. I'd dotted every I, crossed every T. He took one look and nodded. "You've done everything right, Ms. Morton." Funny. No one had said that to me in years. Inside, Melinda was pacing. Zane stood with his arms crossed, filming again like this was all one big reality show finale. I heard him mutter, "Let's see how TikTok likes this." The deputy followed me into the house, quiet but firm. He didn't shout. He didn't raise his voice. Just explained, calmly, that they were now trespassing, that they had to leave today. Melinda exploded. "You can't do this," she shrieked. "She's unstable. She's gonna fall down the stairs next week and need us, and we won't be here." "That's your concern now?" I asked, tilting my head. Zane was still filming. "Look at this. Look what she's doing to us." The deputy turned. "Put the phone down, son." Zane laughed like it was a joke, but his hand dropped. Melinda started grabbing things, throwing them into plastic bags with no rhyme or reason. Her makeup case, a lamp, unopened mail. "You'll regret this," she kept saying. "You'll die in this house, all alone and cold, and no one will come." But I didn't flinch. I stood at the front door and watched as years of resentment, entitlement, and unspoken poison were packed up into car trunks and backpacks. Zane broke first. "This place sucked anyway," he spat. "Your food was trash. You were boring. You've always been a nobody." I looked at him. My grandson, my baby once, and I saw nothing familiar left in his face. And still, I stayed calm. Because I knew he didn't believe his own words. He was scared. So was she. Not of me, but of what it meant that I'd finally said no. When everything was loaded, the deputy waited as they stood by their car. Melinda slammed the door twice before it latched. Zane sat in the passenger seat, arms crossed, pouting like a toddler denied a toy. Melinda rolled down the window. "You don't get to rewrite history, Mom. You were never the victim. You wanted us here. You needed us." I stepped off the porch and looked her dead in the eye. "No," I said. "I hoped you'd come home with love. Instead, you brought cameras." She blinked. The engine roared, and they pulled out of the driveway without another word. Just like that, they were gone. The deputy tipped his hat. "Call us if there's any trouble." I nodded. "Thank you." When he left, I stood there a long while, alone on the front lawn. Just me and the wind and the faint clink of wind chimes from the porch rail. No yelling. No footsteps. No staged laughter behind a phone screen. Just quiet.